And oh, good. Yep. And it's being recorded. Um, and now I would like to introduce our speaker. She's definitely one of our favorites. As a certified generational healing coach and mother of five, Kendra Stein knows the ins and outs of both the challenges and the joys that family brings. Having led support groups and workshops for over 10 years, she truly enjoys providing a safe space where participants feel seen and heard and empowered. And I've attended a lot of them with my husband and without. Kendra offers a simple and effective path to healing within the family. The process begins with learning skills and tools for positive communication and self-awareness. Next, the focus shifts into repairing and creating healthy attachment bonds between parent and child. Kendra will work with you to create a personalized healing plan using the highly advanced and effective protocol of the Generational Healing Program. She also provides one-on-one sessions as well as small groups for parents. And a lot of her stuff is on the Generational Healing website as well. So today we get the privilege of hearing Kendra talk about Fight Right. Let's welcome you up.
Thank you. Thank you, Shauna. Yes, Shauna is a fellow coach. We've been doing a lot of these things together for a while. So thank you, Shauna. Yeah, I am a coach for family relationships and recently in the last year got trained in couples therapy and couples relationships. And it is one of my deepest passions and I absolutely love it. And so this book, Fight Right, is going to be the topic today. And this is a brand new book by the Gottmans. The Gottmans are a very famous couple who have been doing research and writing books for marriage for about 40 years. I think it's been about, yeah, 4 decades, they say. And so this right now is the cutting edge. It is the most recent, most effective technology and based on science and data. And they've been doing testing and research. And so, really, if you're looking for what's the best way to engage or how do I improve my relationship, this right here is kind of hot off the press. This is the book, Fight Right by the Gottmans. They've published it in 2024 because we noticed a big decline in relationships during COVID. It was a huge stress for people. And they noticed that people's relationships, couples either got closer because they had to be together more, or all of the issues came out and they recognized they didn't actually know how to deal with conflict. And so, because there is a limited amount of couples therapists and it was hard for people to get out, they wrote this book for people to be able to take home and do this work on their own as a couple. And so they made it really hands-on, really easy. There's a lot of great examples and it is all based on research and science and data. So I just think it's the most fabulous book, and I'm so excited to be able to share some of it with you today. And I wish I could share all of it, the whole book. I recommend just getting it because I couldn't pack it all in today. I'm just going to share some of the things that really impacted me that I thought were important. And I've been coaching couples now for about 6 months, and I absolutely love it. And I find that these tools and techniques and things are very effective. And so I highly recommend them. So I'm going to share my screen and get started with this program here. Let's go. Okay. All right. So, Fight Right, turning conflict into connection. This is the purpose of this book, is how we can actually turn our fights into connection. And that actually what they discovered is we need conflict in order to have connection. And this is based on their data of following 40,000 couples over the last 20 years. Some of them are shorter studies, some of them were longer, but the longest ones were up to 20 years that they followed couples. And they found a lot of really interesting data And one of the main things they found was that we need conflict. We need healthy conflict to have connection and intimacy to make our long-term relationships last and be happy. So, what we're going to do is start off with a poll. What was the topic of your last fight? Did you feel more connected or less connected after your fight? And do you believe that it's possible to be connected after a fight? So we're going to take a quick poll, and Myrna's going to put that up for us. And I'm curious to see what everyone answers.
Can you see the poll?
I can see the poll, but I can't answer it.
Hmm. I relaunched it, but it's just showing the results again. Oh,
Mm.
let's see.
Oh, some people are answering, just not me.
I see the poll and I'm able to answer.
Oh,
Okay.
maybe just because I'm a host, I can't. I don't know.
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay, great.
So how much more time do you want to give? Hmm.
68% participated. We're almost there.
Okay. A little bit longer. Yeah.
I don't even remember our last
Couple
fight.
more minutes. Well, not a couple more minutes. One more minute.
There's a question in the chat, Kendra.
Oh, if you're not in a relationship, it's hard to answer. Yes, that's true. This is geared for couples who are in a relationship. But you can always think about your relationship with your children or siblings or parents, because we all have conflict in all of our relationships, really. And so it's okay to think about it. If you don't have a marriage or partner relationship right now, that think about how you show up with, your daughter or your parents or siblings, someone else in your life.
Okay. Should I end?
Okay.
Is that okay?
Okay. Let's do it. Okay. So here is the results. We have 5% said chores, 35% said parenting. Yes, that is a hard one. 15% finances. Yep, money. And then other. So 45%, there was a lot of things on here that, or a lot of people were in a fight that is not one of these big topics. Now, did you feel more connected or less connected after? Less connected by 75% compared to the 25% who said more connected. So there's a few of you who did find connection after your fight. Good job. Congratulations. And then most of us didn't quite figure that out. We still felt less connected after. Do you believe it's possible to feel more connected? 65% said yes, it is possible. And 10% said no, I don't think so. And then maybe some 25% are kind of on the fence. So, isn't that interesting? Yes. So, I'm going to reshare my screen. All right. And so, what we discover is that um, it's not really about the topic. They, in the Love Lab, is what they call their research lab, they discovered that people fight about everything. And one of the big questions that they got often from reporters and other people asking, what do people fight about? The only answer is everything. That it can be about that you left the dishes in the sink or you didn't walk the dog or it could be parenting, but it could be just you didn't make the bed properly. Really, the topic of the fight didn't matter as much. there was actually always an underlying issue that the fight just kind of brought up. But really, there's deeper issues under the surface that continue to cause the fighting. And if we can get to the deeper questions, if we can understand what's really going on underneath, then we can find connection through it instead of just continuing to argue again about who left the dishes in the sink and whose job it was. I know I will never forget. I was visiting some friends in California, and I was talking to one of the guys there and sharing about what I do and working with couples, and he said, "Oh yeah, I just got really mad at my wife the other day because she ate my steak, and I was just so mad." And I said, "Yeah, it's not really about the steak. There's something underneath that." And he was like, no, it's just about the steak. I was really hungry. I didn't have my steak. And I was like, listen, I promise you, it's not about the steak. There's something underneath. But he just was like, nope, you're wrong. Oh, okay, well, I cannot convince everybody. So this is for you to take and just see if you were open to the idea that maybe it's not about the dishes. Maybe it's not about the steak. Maybe there is something underneath that needs to be addressed. Conflict is necessary for this deeper connection, that to find connection after a fight, and to build intimacy and trust, we do need to go one layer deeper at least, instead of just looking to see what's on the surface. But in order to get to that deeper layer, we need the conflict. We do. And so they've done studies on couples that had conflict in the beginning of their relationship actually had a higher rate of success later on. Why was that? Because in the beginning of a relationship, they found that if the woman was safe enough and confident enough to be able to share her anger and create conflict in a healthy way, then they actually addressed those deeper issues. But reversely, they found that in the relationships where there was little conflict, most of the time it was because the women did not express their unmet needs and things that were going on for them. They suppressed their emotions and they held it in until later on, when there was a lot of long years of bitterness or resentment or unresolved issues because they were never brought up. But in the beginning, when the woman was free to express her anger and they dealt with the issues and they had conflict early, these were the couples that lasted a really long time and had the most satisfaction in their relationships. And so conflict really should lead us to a deeper connection. The problem is that oftentimes we don't know how to do conflict. We don't know how to fight. We end up making mistakes in our fighting. We end up hurting each other. And because of that, then a lot of times we end up just avoiding conflict altogether. And so the true solution is to learn how to fight from what the Gottmans called the masters of love. In their studies, they named these masters of love the couples that lasted for the whole 20 years of their study, right? And they were happy and fulfilled at the end of the study. And so they were really looking into what made these couples successful, what made them have happy and long-term and satisfying relationships. So we're going to learn about, from these masters of love, first of all, why don't we fight right? Why not? How come we don't know how? And why are we not fighting properly or finding that connection? So the first thing that is talked about in the book that's really important is your conflict style. So 83% of couples seeking couples therapy actually had a mismatch of their conflict style. And it means they didn't agree about how to fight. They didn't agree on how to have conflict. So therefore, they were continuing to have this conflict that didn't result in connection because they couldn't agree on what it even looked like. However, this is not a deal breaker. All it means is it's time to learn what is your conflict style and how can you adjust to your partner's conflict style that may be different than yours. So there's 3 basic types: the avoider, the validator, and the volatile. The avoiders don't like conflict, period. They get flooded easily when they have any negative emotions or their partner has any kind of intensity. They immediately start to feel unsafe. They go into kind of fight, flight, freeze. They'll shut down. They'll run away. They'll panic. Their heart rate goes up. They lose access to their thinking brain very easily, very quickly. They just don't like conflict, so they'll avoid it completely. That's the avoider. So they don't like any kind of conflict is bad for the avoider. Validator. This conflict style is one that they don't mind engaging in differences and trying to find compromise, but they often just get stuck in that let's just find a solution phase. Let's just find a solution. Let's not talk about the deeper issue. Let's not talk about what's really going on or dwell too much in negative emotions. Let's just try to find a solution. And then there's volatile. Now, volatile, they go straight to wanting to persuade the other person of their point of view, and they use big emotions and they're very passionate, and they actually like conflict. They engage in conflict on purpose as a way to connect. They find connection through the clashing, through the conflict. They enjoy that kind of intensity. And so you can imagine that if you had an avoider with a volatile, for example, that would be a big clash. And that's what they have found, that those two are the ones that have the hardest time engaging in conflict because they don't agree on what to do with feelings. They don't agree on how to feel about feelings. They don't agree on what a fight should look like. Avoiders think we shouldn't fight at all. Volatiles feel like we need to fight all the time because that's how we engage with each other and feel, love and intimacy, and there's passion there. So oftentimes those two will be attracted to each other because opposites attract. And there's so much more about this in the book that I would love for you to read and understand deeper. And it's so fascinating. But this is where we find ourselves in conflicting conflict styles. And so what happens is we end up thinking our way is correct, our way is right, and the other person's is wrong. So now we're battling out why we're not fighting the way we think fights should go. And of course, this comes from our family of origin, how we learned growing up about fighting. And so this is really important. They in the studies, they discovered that none of these styles are inherently bad or better than the others. They're actually, all of them can be equally good. And they found that across the board, couples, it didn't matter which style that they had. There was other things, other factors that created the lack of connection after a conflict. If you had 2 volatiles and they both agreed on their volatile style, the big energy and passions and emotion didn't lead to unhappiness. It was only when people were together who they couldn't agree on whose conflict style was right. That's when there was a big clash and stuckness and unhappiness. So this is really important for us to understand, for us to know about ourselves, and to see if we have a mismatch, how we might start to compromise a little bit to be open to a different way of relating, open to a different conflict style. And so I'm curious for people to dive into this a little bit. We're going to do some breakout rooms. Which conflict style do you feel you relate to more? Now, it's on a spectrum. You're not like just one or the other, but you're going to be kind of on a scale, maybe in between 2, closer to 1, just kind of that remembering that it's not just black and white, which one do you relate with most? And which one do you think your partner is? And do you have a mismatch? And how has this affected your ability to navigate conflict? Has this had an impact on you, do you think? And so we're going to have breakout rooms that Myrna's going to put us all, just pair us up. And I want you to just think about which one you relate to more and your partner and how that clashes, or maybe it doesn't. And it's something to explore with another person there in the breakout room. And if you can't go into a breakout room, you can let Myrna know and just journal about it yourself. Write it down, what conflict style you might be and which one your partner is and how that impacts you. So we're just going to take 5 minutes for this breakout. It's just a short one.
So just to clarify, if they're not in a current relationship, they can do it with any relationship, right?
Correct.
Current
Yep.
child. Yep. Okay. All right. So I'm going to open the rooms and you'll come back in 5 minutes.
Through? Okay, okay.
All right. Hi, welcome back, everyone. I put it on gallery view so I can see you all. And I'm curious if anyone wants to just share briefly for the group, you discovered something about yourself or your couple about your conflict styles. Any aha moment in doing that? Any brave volunteer?
Yeah, I volunteer.
Okay.
This is Grandma Lucia. I always thought that my husband and I are both avoiders, but by your definition, I think he's a validator.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's sort of, it looks similar because it's not wanting to have any conflict at all, just solve it right away and not wanting to go deeper. So that was illuminating. So thank you for that.
Awesome. Isn't it amazing? We can still learn things about each other after 40 years of being together. That's right. Anyone else? Rose?
Yeah, I was inspired by. Oh, I'm sorry. Is there another Rose?
There's a Rose and a Roseanne.
Oh, okay. Go ahead, Rose.
I know. So I just want to apologize. I thought we were only two people in the group, so I talked too much. Because I thought there was just two of us, so I apologize for that. And so maybe the other sister who didn't get, I think there was three people in the end. Maybe the sister who didn't get a chance to speak might like to say something. But I definitely realized that I'm volatile and my husband is an avoider, and this is we've got the worst case scenario, and we don't have conflicts, and which is killing me. But it's good. That's his preferred way of dealing with the situation, and I get, for me, it's like I feel I'm getting the cold shoulder treatment. That it's just there's a lot of avoidance. So, and I've taken to the tactic of then I thought, well, maybe I have to play things his way, or also get involved in when he's in several music groups and sings in the choir, and he's just very active. So, but I think he's avoiding being at home, or so. But maybe that's also something I have to do.
Yeah, that's a really good observation to notice that you're both on the opposite end of the spectrum there. And the first step is to recognize neither one of you is bad or wrong. You both have different styles. And that the only way it's going to work is if you start to come toward each other. But that means both people have to start taking steps to meet each other in the middle. And you don't have to change your conflict style. The book says you don't have to change it. You just have to be open to some influence. You just have to be open to taking some steps toward the other in and understanding the way that they do conflict. But you're probably never going to be, you're not going to become an avoider. If you're a volatile, you're always going to have big emotions, right? So it's learning. That's what we're going to get into next is, okay, so we're different conflict styles. So how can we make it work? Well, there's very specific formulas, very specific things that they've discovered in the labs. As long as you have these things, you can make it work, even with a volatile and an avoider. So yes, thank you for that, Rose. All right, well, so let's move on to a few more things, and we'll have more time for questions and things as we go. But let's learn a little bit more. Okay, so here's a really cool part of the study that I thought was very fascinating. Within the first 3 minutes of the fight, this formula, the computer program that they developed, can predict with 96% accuracy whether this couple will be together or not together in 6 years, whether they will be together and unhappy or not together at all, or together and happy. They have a program that they have created to determine with almost 100% accuracy just by 3 minutes of a couple interacting. 3 minutes of them getting into a conflict, and they can tell you, are you going to stay together or be divorced? It's mind-blowing. And the reason is because 97% of the time, the fight is going to end the way that it started. And that if this conflict that's going on in that first 3 minutes, you'll see all of these parts of the conflict that if these negative things are happening, then they're happening throughout the whole relationship, and they're detrimental to the relationship, and they will come up right away in the first 3 minutes. If you give yourself permission to be judgmental or harsh or mean or whatever it is in that first 3 minutes, you're going to do it in the rest of your relationship also. And so we're going to find out what entails, what is that 3 minutes consist of that can give us such data to determine whether we're going to be together or not 6 years from now. So, mastering conflict. So the masters of love, they had these things in common. Okay, in the first 3 minutes of the fight, there's a lot of these things were the same across the board for the masters of love, the ones that made it. And I took the main points, but again, there's more in the book if you want to find out more. But here's the ones that were really important. The soft startup, the way you begin a fight, is very, very important. The 5-to-1 ratio. So that means 5 positive things to every 1 negative, 5 positive interactions to every 1 negative interaction during the fight. Taking a break when you get flooded, that was important. And then turning toward your partner's bid for connection, as opposed to turning away or ignoring. So we're going to go through each one of those. Okay, so the softened startup is the first one that's really, really important. What they found is there's these 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. Criticism, contempt, defensiveness, and stonewalling. If you have any of those 4 things in those first 3 minutes of your fight, then you are predicted to not have a happy, fulfilled relationship 6 years from now. Maybe you'll still be together, but you won't be happy. Criticism, contempt, defensiveness, and stonewalling. These are 4 things that they show up right away in the beginning and right in those first 3 minutes. And if you give yourself permission to do those things in the beginning, then they're going to be throughout your entire relationship as well. So the harsh startup, that first 3 minutes, it ends in disconnection. It's going to end the way it started. So if the conflict starts with an attack, with criticism or contempt, it's going to end with that same feeling. It's going to, if you attack someone as the way that you begin a fight, there's no other way for the person to respond except to be defensive. Because when you're attacked, you have to defend. I mean, there's no other way for it to go. So it's like starting a war. What do you expect? You're creating a war. And in wars, there's a winner and a loser. And in relationship, if there's a winner and a loser, there's not really a winner. You're both a loser. And they talk about this in the book, that it's the zero sum effect. If somebody gets the win, that, and then someone's a loser, then now that actually equals out to zero, to nothing. There's no winning if one person has to lose. It doesn't work that way. You both lose. And so even if the conflict starts with maybe not an attack, but just an open, hey, I have an unmet need, or hey, you did this thing that bothered me, and it's not an attack, if it's met with defensiveness or shutting down, that's also a dead end, because it doesn't lead to connection, because we're not getting to that unmet need underneath. We're not going, oh, what's going on? Oh, the dishes were in the sink. Oh, let me find out. Oh yeah, that's hurting you because this is something that's really important to you. It's showing you that I'm there for you, and I dropped the ball, and now you can't trust me. There's a deeper underlying unmet need going on. But if we defend right away, then we don't get there. So we don't get that connection that we're looking for. The masters of love engaged in conflict, no matter what their style was, without these 4 horsemen. And so I have some really fun videos that I'm going to share with you. I just have to share my screen differently to make it work. I have here. Oops. Okay. Oops, sorry. Okay, so what I have here is this man called Jimmy, and he's on social media. His title is Jimmy on Relationships, and he's got some really fabulous videos that we're gonna watch for what it looks like to have a harsh startup. And we're going to do, the first one is where he has a conflict mediator. So it shows a couple beginning to fight, right? That first 3 minutes, the beginning where it doesn't go well. They're off to the races. They're fighting with each other. The 4 horsemen are everywhere. So see if you can kind of catch the criticism, contempt, defensiveness, that. And then you'll see the conflict mediator comes in and he calls people out, and you'll see that they're both of them have something to own here. So we're gonna check this out, and hopefully this works.
Don't bother coming home early if you're just gonna stare at your phone. Oh,
sorry, I want it to be bigger screen. Okay.
They're coming home early if you're just gonna stare at your phone. Oh my gosh, if I work late, then I get yelled at for neglecting you. If I try to come home early to spend some time with you, but I have to answer the occasional email, I get yelled at for staring at my phone. You're blaming me for this? No. Mediator, we need you? Yeah, how can I help? We get into another conflict, narcissist, and I just need you to tell my husband here that he's clearly wrong. She's a crazy person. Okay, just looking at the transcripts here, it looks like you're both wrong. Haha, what did I do? He's clearly the one that doesn't care about connecting with me. Wait, was that your goal? What did I say? Was that the purpose you brought up this conversation to him? You wanted more connection? Well, yeah. Okay, well, why didn't you say anything like that in your initial statement? I mean, I have here, don't bother coming home if you're just going to stare at your phone. That sounds like your goal was just to make him feel like a piece of crap that can't do anything right, but maybe I'm missing something. Well, I was just hoping that I could avoid any self-reflection or actual vulnerability, and that he would just read my mind and know what I needed. Is that not a possibility? No, that's not a thing. Okay. Well, I think we got everything we needed. You can go. And you need to learn to stop escalating things. Haha. Real mature. And I'm certainly not justifying her bringing up her issues with blame or criticism, but Have you tried not taking everything as an attack? Have you tried leading with some curiosity or empathy? Have you tried asking her if she even feels safe to be vulnerable? Both of you need to be more mature. Stop blaming the other person for why you can't either express or listen respectfully. Look out for any unmet needs underneath your partner's complaints or frustration. Encourage their vulnerability and apologize when you mess it up.
Okay. Hold on. Okay, I have to go back into it. Okay, so that, I know it's fast paced and he talks a lot. But if you want to look him up yourself and, watch his videos kind of over and over, he does such a fantastic job of playing the two roles. And he was actually the kind of narcissist or avoidant. He cheated on his wife, but through that experience, actually, he really didn't want to lose his marriage. He wanted to fight for it. So he learned all of this really amazing stuff about relationships and how to show up and be vulnerable and take accountability. And he loves the Gottman's work. And so that's why I love to use his videos. And so you saw there that both people were at fault there, where the wife, the one in the wig, brought up her unmet need in an attacking way with criticism and contempt. And so how else was he going to respond except for being defensive, right? But because he was defensive, then it just escalated the argument and didn't go anywhere. So if you find yourself with someone who's attacking, that's when you could pause and say, hold on, that feels like an attack. Let's start over. Let's try again, right? You do have some agency, you have some autonomy, you have some freedom, you have responsibility in the relationship yourself to not engage in that kind of behavior, in that kind of conflict. You can choose to walk away. So that's why he calls both people out. Both people have responsibility. So I want to share another one that I think is really funny that hold on a second. I have to get out of this. Sorry, hold on a second. Okay. It's just a little bit complicated with the sharing of the screen here. Okay, so the next one, he has a remote that one person, the woman on this one, and the other one has the guy doing it, where they click through different toxic responses through you'll notice all the ones that are not healthy until he finally gets to the one that is healthy and good. So see if you can relate to any of these, the ways that he does this.
Hey, can I talk to you about how I'm feeling without you getting
Hold on.
defensive or feeling attacked? I don't get defensive. If anyone gets defensive, it's you. So no. Where is that? Can I talk to you about how I'm feeling? Listen, I don't know why you're always looking for this remote, but you can't just push a
Open.
button and get a different response. Oh, found it. Oh yeah, I take everything as an attack. Yeah, what are you talking about? Hate that one. Let's try again. You know you do the same thing to me, right? And I don't make a big deal about it. Okay, went from bad to worse. One more time.
Hold on. Oh no. Hold on a second. Help. Hold on. Where'd it go? I'll fix it. 1 second.
Don't worry, all good. All good. We can take a moment and keep reflecting on what we've been learning.
Also, if you have questions, you can put them in the chat. We will have a time for Q&A after.
Yes, I know we already have one question up. We'll get to it, Sujin. I hope. It's a good question, Sujin. What if you feel those things but don't express them with the intention to try to protect the relationship? Yeah, that's a good one. That happens, especially in the beginning of relationships.
Okay. All right. I'm going to do this one more here. Hopefully this works. What?
Hey, can I talk to you about how I'm feeling without you getting defensive or feeling attacked? I don't get defensive. If anyone gets defensive, it's you. So, no. Where is that remote? Listen, I don't know why you're always looking for this remote, but you can't just push a button and get a different response. Oh, found it. Oh yeah, I take everything as an attack. Yeah, what are you talking about? Hate that one. Let's try again. You know you do the same thing to me, right? And I don't make a big deal about it. Okay, went from bad to worse. One more time. Why are you always trying to start a fight? We were having a good day together. Nope. Come on, you can do better than that. Maybe you're just being too sensitive. Hey, since we're playing the maybe game, maybe you're just being a jerk. Okay, this is what you're not understanding. Feelings aren't facts. Your feelings are irrational. You know, I keep hearing that. My question is, irrational according to who? Me. Self-centered. You just always have to be the victim, don't you? Wow, really going downhill here. I want to be a safe place for you. Oh, hold on. I'm sorry, what? The truth is I do struggle with getting defensive and taking your feelings as an attack because deep down I feel like I'm always one step away from being seen as a failure. We might have a winner. Hey, can I talk to you about how I'm feeling without you?
Awesome. Okay. We did that one. That was good. And if this is easy, I'm going to do one more. But if it's not, then I'm just going to skip it because I don't want it to be too complicated here. Mm. Okay, sorry. I knew this was going to be a risk, so I took the risk.
Yeah, good job. You took the risk. We got to take risks. I like his stuff. Yeah, I see it all over. Yeah, social media as well. Jimmy on Relationships, it's called.
Mm-hmm.
So anybody wants to look at it after, just type that in. They can find what you're, trying to show.
Yes. Yes. Okay. So, I actually I exited out of my entire presentation. So I had to go find it again. Anyways, the point is, and so he also does he switches, right? So he gives the man the remote and has the woman have the toxic responses. So it's not just, making him be the bad guy the whole time. And what I wanted to share, what I wanted you to see is maybe you related to some of those responses, right? Like maybe you heard yourself saying some of those things. Maybe your partner says some of those things. And if you're noticing anything other than the very last one, that's an unhealthy response. That's being defensive, having criticism, contempt, defensiveness, all those things. If that's how we're engaging in our conflict, we're not going to find connection. But that's what we really want is connection, right? Even the reason why there's an attack in the first place is because it's actually a bid for connection. It's actually somebody wanting something, wanting to be closer, and wanting to get those deeper needs met and those questions answered. Are you there for me? Can I count on you? And maybe you weren't there for me and I'm upset about it and I want to fix that. But if we come across and we use those four horsemen, then it stalls the ability to find that connection in the conflict. So that's why I wanted to show those to you, because I just think it just really showcases the idea of where we might find ourselves in our connections with each other. So I'm going to reshare my screen. Oops. Oh gosh. That's not helpful. Try one more time. I'm sorry, guys. Okay.
It's all good, Kendra. It's all good. You have time.
Okay. 。 Okay, there we go. Okay, so now that we we did all that. Okay, here we go. So the softened startup. So how exactly do we do this softened startup? How exactly does that look? How do we get there? We heard that last bit with the I'm not actually a safe space for you. I know you want to share your feelings, but I get defensive, right? We have that, we saw him, and then in another video we could see that a way to bring up the issue that's not an attack. So there in the book, it just says three basic sentences to start this way. Start off with a softened startup. I feel, the issue is, and I need. And there's no blaming. We're talking about ourself, not the other person. So instead of attacking them and saying something negative about what they're doing, we go back into our own feelings and how, okay, the dishes are in the sink. So I feel unimportant and disrespected. The issue is the dishes are still there, even though you promised me that you would do them. They're still sitting there. What I need is for you to, what I need is for you to show up and actually do the thing that you promised me that you would do so that I can trust you. That's what I need. And so if you're not going to be able to do the dishes, please at least come and talk to me about it so that I'm not left with this this broken trust or feeling unimportant, right? Because you made this promise to me, something like that, where you're saying what you feel, what the issue is, and then what's that need underneath, where it gets a little bit tricky, where it gets a little bit vulnerable, where you have to start to talk about yourself in a more vulnerable way. And that can be pretty scary sometimes. So what we're going to do in order to practice this as a group, we're going to practice moving from the harsh startup to a softened startup using this kind of I feel, the issue is, and what I need. And so what I'm going to do is I have the book, and in the book it has a lot of examples. And so I'm going to read the scene and do the harsh startup. And then I'm going to ask for volunteers to say how you would do it instead as a softened startup, what that might look like, so we can get real practice. So, ready? Here's the first one. Your partner pulls into the driveway. Immediately, you notice there's a new dent on the front bumper and a long scrape along the door. Your blood pressure goes through the roof. Just 2 weeks ago, you and your partner were pulled over for speeding in a school zone, and the ticket was huge. So here's a harsh startup. What the heck is this? Again? Do you have any idea how much your reckless driving is going to cost us? How is your partner likely to respond to that? Right? Like that's a boom attack, criticism, contempt. That's not going to elicit a very kind response in return, right? How do we respond when we're attacked? We're going to defend. So instead of that, what might a softened startup look like? I feel what? You dented the car after just costing us money from a speeding ticket. That's the issue, right? And then what's the need? So just what might that look like? I'm curious if anyone is brave enough to unmute and just take a stab at what might the feeling be of that person, the one who's upset.
Um, I feel really, I feel angry and I feel frustrated.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, angry and frustrated. That's right. And now,
Also, maybe scared.
what I was going to say, anger is a very normal, very like go-to reaction, that we're frustrated, we're angry. And then it's also a a top emotion that there's always something more vulnerable underneath the anger. Anger means it's like a protective kind of emotion. It's protecting some kind of hurt or pain or something underneath. It's usually fear, shame, sadness, something like that. And so if you could take, yes, I'm angry, that's true, and let's say it. Let's not be scared of our anger, especially if we're women. Let's say I'm angry and pick one more vulnerable emotion right underneath the anger. What might it be?
Helpless.
Helpless. That's a great one.
Well, I think Shauna said when she said scared,
Yes.
the person's scared that they're going to get another ticket or an accident or who knows what.
You got it. Yep.
Worried.
Worried. About the finances, maybe, because it's a lot of money again.
And maybe he was in an accident. Maybe he's
Right.
hurt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How about are you okay? What happened?
Yeah.
Because we're valuing the car and the finances and all these above the person. To my way of thinking, if my wife turned up with a dent in the car, regardless of anything that happened before, my first thinking is, wow, are you all right? Did you survive something desperate? That would be my approach.
Brownie points for Tony. I love that guy. Yes. Yes. Let's ask.
Nice husband.
The car is unimportant. The finances are important. You've only got one wife. You've only got one wife,
There you go. Yes. Like, oh my gosh, let's start with curiosity. What happened? Right? That's exactly right. Great job. But we also are allowed to be angry because, we don't want to hide and suppress. And a lot of women, they pretend like they're not angry, but they really are. So it is important for women to say, hey, I'm angry and I'm really scared or worried. And, they can have both emotions are good, but curiosity is fantastic. Okay. All right. That was awesome. Okay. Ready? Here's another one. All right. So your partner's helping the kids with their homework while you make dinner. You overhear them working on a math assignment and it's not going well. Your daughter's in tears and your partner's frustrated and snaps at her that if she doesn't focus, then the homework session is over and she's just going to flunk for all she cares. Right? So she's like, yeah, fine. Just, fail your grade. I don't care. And so the harsh startup. Geez, you sound so awful, just like your father. Do you want to mess her up the way your parents messed you up? I can't imagine saying that, but I know that a lot of people do. And I might be thinking that in my mind, but I won't say it out loud. But that doesn't mean that I'm not thinking it. So I think, honestly, that's probably something that would come across my mind. But what would a softened startup look like instead of just attack and blame and shame? What's a feeling? And what's a need?
I used to tell my daughter that it took the best part of 4,000 years to create modern mathematics, and that if you struggle somewhere along the line, that's completely natural. That you're just going through a process, and the whole thing with mathematics is that you're going to experience some real frustration at some point. Whether it's now
what would you tell
PhD or whatever.
What would you tell your wife if you heard her getting upset and being like, forget you, little girl, I'm not going to help you, just flunk for all I care? What would you say to your wife?
I would say to my wife, look, let's switch positions. You just continue with the food here. I'll continue with the teaching.
So we have a validator.
That's exactly what happens, and that's exactly what I've done with my husband.
Yes.
Like, okay, clearly.
Is it a bad solution?
So ready? This is a solution-oriented approach. You have a good solution. You want to come and fix the problem, but now you haven't connected with your wife. You haven't learned anything about each other, and this conflict, that emotion just for her especially, just gets buried, and you may maintain some kind of judgment that she's not doing a good job as a parent. I don't know, but that's common for people, especially validators. And I'm one too. I like to validate, just kind of find a solution quickly. And what if she doesn't like your solution, right? So that's a good approach, but it's not gonna actually help with you and your wife having connection. So there's conflict here, and you didn't share a feeling, which is a vulnerable thing to do. And so how would you share a feeling with your wife? How do you feel about the way that she's approaching your daughter?
Yeah, well, my wife and I practice something a little different, actually. You know, I have a dial in my mind, and that dial is, Tony, how high is your resentment at this moment, at any given moment? And if my resentment is triggered, as I think that's your terminology, and that you become flooded. I would just say, let's just step back and just deal with these difficult feelings, but take a little time.
So what I hear you saying is that you wouldn't necessarily approach or share a feeling in the moment. And someone said in the chat, I just saw too, that maybe not in the moment if you do have big feelings. So let's pretend that in that moment you just solved the problem, but then later you came back around to your wife and you're going to share a feeling with her now. And this is the thing right here. So I'm glad that you spoke up, Tony, because I understand. Also, I've been a validator and avoidant. I'm in between those two. I don't like talking about feelings. I don't like being vulnerable. Now I do, but I didn't for a long time. I avoided a lot of that stuff. And then I didn't get the deeper emotional connection and intimacy that my partner was looking for. And most of us want that and need that, actually, and we're not getting it. That's why we're here. And so, yes, it's easier to find a solution and keep moving past it, but that's not going to get the deep connection we're looking for with our partner. So here's where we have to get uncomfortable as avoidance and validators, that we have to go deeper and say, and be honest. Well, how did that make me feel? I felt uncomfortable at the very least. I didn't like that interaction. It made me feel what? What would you feel if your wife was acting like that towards your daughter? What feeling comes up? And you can tell her privately without your kids around, so it's safe. What would you say? This is practice.
Well, but yeah. Full disclosure, my wife and I we had our last really heated argument about 25 years ago.
And so that's a good point, though, Tony, is that they say you can't have intimacy and deep connection without conflict. So they brought all these couples into the Love Lab, and the ones that were avoidance, they had a really hard time even finding something to fight about. And when they finally did, when they were prompted, they didn't like it at all. They didn't want to deal with tough emotions, with anything vulnerable or intimate of sadness or fear or anger or any kind of things like that. They just, it automatically caused them to shut down or want to move away and not do it. And this is where we find a lot of people are married to people like that they're not getting their needs met. Now, if you're both avoidant and you're both happy with the avoidance, then it can work, as long as you're not and having a lot of negative interactions and you're also putting in a lot of positives. And that's something that we'll come to a little bit later. It can work if you agree. If you and your wife both agree, we don't want to talk about those hard things. We're just going to focus on the positive and put lots of positive things into our relationship. That can work. But the conflict comes when people don't agree with that. When the other partner goes, but I want connection. I want intimacy. I want depth. I want to know the more vulnerable parts of my partner. That's where we find people in a mismatch, and then they come to therapy because they're not getting what they need. So it might actually work for you, for your couple, if your wife agrees. I'd be curious to see what her thoughts were, if she agreed with you or not. That's what I would be. You might want to just ask her if she agrees, and if she does, then great. Then you guys don't need to do all this because what you have already works.
Well,
Guess what? Oh,
I have a Japanese wife. So
Oh,
I learned I learned very early that I had to ask her.
mhm.
I had to ask her,
Yes, she's going to
what
have
do
a
you
harder
think?
time with
What do you think
emotions.
about
Yes.
what do you think about this?
And
And I
maybe ask her,
remember,
what do you feel about it, instead
and
of what do you
then and
think about
then
it?
and then you really do have an interesting transition from,
Hmm. Hmm.
I think it's a totally stupid idea, something like that. You
Yes,
really
yes.
do
And
get
then you
that.
get,
So
but
so,
that's
so
real.
so now I always ask,
Hmm.
I always ask, what do you feel about this? Or what do you feel about that?
Yes, yes.
So we do, I've learned that, when something's high pressure, or actually, look, my wife and I share the same thoughts. We have very, very, I feel that we are very connected in many ways. But uh, I think a lot of it was because we had so much conflict with
Hmm.
other people that we learned to manage conflict very well. And
Well, good. Well, good. And you can help us to, um, at the end when we're doing more question and answer, maybe we can
yeah, yeah,
offer
yeah.
some
Sorry,
extra
I am,
tips and
but you're
tricks
making a
here.
great point. I have a lot of people. I know a lot of people who really need exactly the kind of therapy that you're giving them at this time.
Yes, yes. Awesome. Thank you. Thanks, Tony.
Kendra, guess
Appreciate.
what? We have 10 more minutes.
10 more minutes. Oh. Okay.
No.
So we'll just do, thank you for that, Shauna, because I didn't know that. And I will wrap up a couple things. Okay. Um, First, the one of the most important things in the entire book that I want everyone to take home with them, I feel like it's incredibly important, is the second little piece right here, the 5-to-1 ratio. And that's where even during a fight, there needs to be 5 positive interactions to every 1 negative. Now, in regular everyday life, there should be 20 positives for every 1 negative. But during a fight, 5 positive interactions, even while you're having conflict. What is a positive interaction? An apology, a smile, a nod, empathizing, validating, mirroring, noting where do we agree, owning your part, saying good point, fair enough, recalling past successes, joking, laughing, any of those things while you're having your conflict. In all the masters of love maintained this ratio, whether or not they were avoidant, validator, or volatile. They maintained the 5-to-1 ratio, and they maintained the 20 positive interactions during the week also. So part of my homework, so we're not going to do it right now. You have to take it home for homework. Write it down. 10 positive things that you can do for your partner this week, like offering a kind greeting, sending a loving text, some loving touch, complimenting them, doing a chore for them, listening to them, initiating sex, buying them food, things like that. Something kind, 10 positive interactions. Now, this is really, really helpful for avoidant couples, because avoidant couples, maybe they don't have a lot of conflict, but they don't have a lot of positive things either. So start putting positive things into your relationship intentionally. And the one little piece I'm going to add is, if you really want to make a difference, find someone to be your accountability partner. Write down a name right now on your paper who you're going to tell these 10 positive things to. It can be anybody you feel safe enough to engage in this conversation with. I'm going to tell this person that these 10 positive things I'm going to do for my partner. And then I'm going to check back in with them after the week is done to tell them which of those things did I actually do. And then you'll get to see How much are you actually investing in your relationship? How many positive things are you actually putting in? And if you each do 10, you and then your partner does 10, then you'll have 20. And there you go. With all of that, then it's okay if you avoid some of these harder conflicts, if you're more avoidant, because you have a lot of positives. Okay, taking a break when flooded is one of the other things Masters of Love did. They did not engage when either one was upset, was really angry, was like even volatile couples, if they started to feel overwhelmed or too intense, they would take a break and come back. And so when you're flooded, when you're in your fight, flight, freeze, when you're feeling your heart rate is up and you're very intense, you don't actually have access to your empathy or your curiosity. You can't show up the way that you want to in a relationship when you're flooded. You have to take a break and regulate in order to do that. And as long as one person's regulated, then it works, as long as one person is. And so if you are feeling out of it, if you're feeling flooded and activated and upset and triggered, take a break, regulate yourself. And they even say now, go to bed angry. It's okay. That's the new rule. It's actually better. Go to bed angry. You'll wake up the next day farther away from that fight, feeling better, able to engage in the conflict without being flooded. Okay, and then the turning toward bids for connection is so, so important. The Masters of Love, they turned toward their partner's bids for connection 86% of the time. And the couples that didn't make it, they only turned toward each other 33% of the time. That's huge, that statistic right there. Do you want to make it last? Do you want your relationship to last and be happy? Turn toward your partner's bid for connection. You have a choice. You can turn away or against or toward. So another part of your homework, write down 5 things that you think your partner does as a bid for connection. What do you think that they're doing as a bid? What does that look like? And write down the ways you offer a bid for connection. And then you can share them with each other. So now you know when one person goes, hey, look at this funny cat meme I saw. That's a bid for connection. They want you to stop what you're doing and turn and look and laugh with them, right? Or if they ask, what do you think we should do for dinner tonight? That's a bid for connection. They want you to engage with them. Do you dismiss? Do you turn away? Do you ignore? Or do you stop what you're doing and engage and be curious and want to have that moment of connection? 86% of the time, the Masters of Love turned toward. They engaged in a positive way. The ones that didn't make it only engaged 33% of the time. This is huge, 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 huge for any couple. Make this one little difference in your relationship. It's going to make a big, big, big difference for you guys. Turning toward when your partner, but if you don't know what their bids of connection are, that might be difficult. That's why part of your homework is to write it down, figure it out. And we're almost out of time, so I'm just going to, honestly, this is just so you guys can understand how amazing this book is and that it really will help in your relationship. There's so many great tools here. The last one I guess we'll talk about is gridlock. One of the, the other major points of this book is that 69% of all conflict is not solvable. 69% of all of your fights are perpetual. They don't have a solution. And so this is where it comes to this idea of like that 6 and the 9 that you see there. One person's looking at the number and saying like, it's a 6. And the other person's looking at it saying, no, it's a 9. And they're arguing about what the number actually is, and they can't agree on it. But the only way to find agreement is to come to the other person's side and look at it from their point of view, from their perspective, to see, oh, I see. Yeah, it is a 6. But without losing yours, you can stay, but say, okay, well, come over to my side and look from over here. See, I see a different number. And then that person says, oh, I get it. I see. And now we understand each other. We have two equal but different realities, equal but different. This is so, so, so important for couples to recognize. Conflict most of the time is perpetual. We're going to keep fighting over the same things. For 40 years, we're going to keep fighting over the same things. But it's about how we fight. It's about not just being stuck in our point of view, but willing to accept there's different realities. And we have to be willing to go to the other side and look from the other person's perspective in order to make it work. And so there was an interesting study. Men who were unwilling to accept the influence of their partner had an 81% chance of the relationship ending in a breakup. 81%. And they took men specifically because generally in our society, men are more dominating, and women are intrinsically in our DNA afraid of men. Because when you ask for our deepest fears, if you ask a man his deepest fear, he'll say, of a woman, what's your deepest fear? Is that she'll reject me. And if you ask a woman what is her deepest fear about a man, it's that he'll kill me. So going back to the beginning of time, right? Men have always been bigger, stronger, and their anger is terrifying on a very deep, deep, deep level. So men will often dominate in the relationship. And then the women who are too scared to say how they feel get with those men, and then the issues never get talked about. And then it ends up in a breakup later or an unhappy, resentful marriage. So it's so, so important for the men to recognize they need to, in order to have a healthy relationship that lasts and that's happy and fulfilling, they have to be willing to accept influence by their partner. So if you're a man, just ask yourself this question: what's the difference between a dominator and a protector? Because as the man in the relationship, if you're the protector, it doesn't mean you should dominate. It means you should protect, which means protecting her humanity, her dreams, her hopes, what she wants out of life, who she is. That's what we want to be protecting, not dominating with how we think things should be. So that's something that they talk about a lot more in the book. That's really fascinating. They have a method for getting out of gridlock where things are really at odds and you're just finding that you can't move past a certain stuckness in your relationship. You can learn about that in the book. And there's a repair process that is really, really important for, it doesn't matter how long ago the fight was, you can always do a repair. And so going again, if you get the book and go through that, you'll find what these steps mean: feelings, reality, trigger, responsibility, need, and how to move through them as a couple. It's all of it is laid out very clearly. It has a whole guide, step by step. It's meant to be done at home as a couple. So it's very, very easy to do with you together as a couple.
Okay,
so,
Kendra. Woo, yes. Looks like we're gonna need to, have a part 2, huh?
Yes, maybe that is a good idea, Shauna. That there's so much, and I knew there was a lot there, but basically just my final word is that relationships are not easy. And if you find yourself getting stuck, then it's okay to ask for help. And professional help is available too. And so whether you buy the book or you find a couples therapist, I do therapy for couples and I absolutely love it. And I would love to engage with anyone who wants to even just find out more to understand what they could do better or how they could improve. It's worth it to get some help, to get some support, that there is help out there, and that there's couples who have navigated really, really hard situations and really big stuckness and found a really deep, beautiful intimacy, no matter what was the problem or the rupture. So yeah, that's just what I want to end on. And maybe I think, Shauna, your idea is great that we can do a second half uh, at a different month so we can talk more about some of those things that we didn't get a chance to today.
Yes, definitely. The book is overflowing with so many interesting things, huh? So I know it's hard to stop. Who has enjoyed this topic? Round of applause for Kendra. Who wants a part 2, maybe in the coming months? Who'll be there? Okay, well, it's 2:30 Eastern time. Do we have a moment for a question? Well, there was 2 questions in the chat. Should I read them, or should we just move on, Myrna, to the next month?
Maybe we have to move on. Sorry.
Okay. Okay. Thank you for your questions. Remember, Kendra is always there. She's put herself out there if you want to contact her, ask her questions, and definitely get the book. Can you show us the book one more time, Kendra? Fight Right.
Yeah, it's called Fight Right.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yes. We definitely need to, I think, revisit this. So next month, Myrna, do you want to share anything?
Sure. Let me share my screen. Let's see. Hold on. Okay.
Could you show the book again for a second, please?
Okay, how about can you see it? Or we can do it after I stop sharing. So just next month, I'm actually giving a presentation on energy and emotions. So some of this complements what Kendra was talking about, but this is more about learning how to recognize things that block us and how our emotions, beliefs, and thoughts and intentions impact us and those around us for good and bad, and what to do about it. So you will get Kendra's contact information in the follow-up email, and I will talk to Kendra. Maybe we can do this in April instead of the other one that we talked about. Okay?
Yeah, let's do that.
Well, thank you everyone very much for attending. Thank you, Kendra, very much. You can tell it's just her love and her passion is stuffed in. So I want to hear more later.
So Kendra, maybe you can share the book again because somebody asked and you weren't spotlighted.
Yeah. So Fight Right by the Gottmans. It was released only last year. So it's really the most recent, updated, top of the line, cutting edge in relationships. Yes.
Thank you, Kendra, for all of your effort, for your work. Thank you, everyone, for attending. See you next month, March 8th, with Miss Myrna on energy and emotions.
Okay. See you, everybody.
Very helpful. Hi, Shauna. Bye, Shauna.
Hi, Auntie. Bye, Auntie.
Too bad your parents weren't on this, darn it.
Yeah.
Hey, can people access this later on?
Yes.
The recording will be sent out in the link to the recording will be sent out in the newsletter.
Perfect. Okay, good.
Okay.
I'll forward it to my sister. Bye-bye. Happy trails.
Bye-bye.